It's time to render the tallow. So this is going to be the first render, and this is where my process is a little bit different from other people's. Doesn't make their process wrong. This is just how I do it and how I've found gives me a better end product. So I'm starting, this is 10 pounds of beef suet. Not that much tallow. It's just because it's ground, it takes up a lot more space. But I am starting with my largest pot here. Some people will render in a roasting oven, which I'm totally fine with, but not on the first render, and I'll tell you why. So this pan is gonna heat solely from the bottom up. It's a thick bottomed pan, so I'm not gonna be getting heat from the sides. So when I add this fat in and I put the water in, the water is gonna act kind of as a barrier between the heat and the fat. So we went through very carefully. We took out any scent glands that are in here, any large pieces of meat, but there is still tiny, let me find, I don't even know if the camera will pick up, but there's a little bit of color here. So there's tiny meat particles. There's tiny bits of blood in here. It would be very, very difficult, if possible, to get every impurity out before you grind it, even though we work really hard to do that. We don't want any of those pieces to cook, because what happens when meat or tissue particles begin to cook, it starts getting that scent into your tallow, which for cooking wouldn't be that big of a deal, but when you're trying to make skincare products, nobody wants to smell like a meat locker. So we're gonna try our best to get out those impurities before they cook. So let's get started. All of this beef suet into our pot. So our fat is in here. I'm gonna go ahead and put a half gallon of water in here. Again, this is just kind of to help make a shield there at the bottom. And we're gonna turn that on. I'm gonna turn it on like between medium and low. We want this to heat up very slowly. We're gonna keep stirring it so there's no hot spots formed in it. And we'll go from there. It's been a long time since I've done a batch this small. I should have done a smaller pot. I will give you that. You can see. It really, when it starts melting, it's gonna condense a lot. So here's water still. You'll be able to tell when it starts, when the oil starts coming to the top. It's gonna be yellow. But for now, that's just water, and that's creating a great buffer for our fat so we don't have things cooking and browning. We don't want that to happen. Okay, it is starting to melt down now. So I'm gonna move this over here. Keep it on. But I'm going to start straining it. Now this is gonna be our first filtration, and all that we're doing here is getting the tissue and meat particles out of this. And then we'll do our first like real render, I guess you could say. So you can see here, this is water. There's little bits of fat starting to form. Now, here's my first scoop. So this has some beef fat in it that it hasn't melted at all yet. That's okay. Okay, so even though there is still fat in here, it's fine. We're just getting out some of this. There's also gonna be water in these ladles. It's fine. If it looks like you're getting low in water in here, just add more water here. This fat that's in the colander, we're just gonna throw back in here when it gets a little too full. We don't wanna waste any of the suet. We're just trying to remove the tissue. And we're pulling from the top. We're not like shoving this colander deep down, because the fat, like you know, oil and water don't mix, so the fat's gonna come to the top. Another important thing to note here is you want to make sure that you're still stirring in your pot, your first pot, because even though the fat will come up to the top, the debris, the tissue, all the undesirable things are going to sink to the bottom, and those can brown at the bottom of your pan, and you do not want that to happen. Again, the smell. So keep stirring and then keep pulling from the top. Okay, so we're getting closer to the bottom of the pan. There's quite a bit in my colander here that you can see. Yes, there is fat in here, but there's also just a lot of tissue. I'm going to still render this down for cooking tallow, but this is past the point of skincare when there's this much tissue, because in order to get all of that fat out, we need to heat it up higher. Okay, so we're all done now. We have all of this stuff out of our pot, mostly. I'll show you what's left. Maybe. There's some water down there, and there is still a little bit of fat, not very much, but it's starting to brown now in the bottom. So I'm not gonna use that anymore. Once the tissue starts to brown, that's what we talked about, it's starting to cook. So you can see here, this is still like an off-white color, brownish color, but it's not turning that gray color like meat does when it starts to cook. So we removed as much fat as we're going to for skincare. The rest is gonna go back in, and that'll be for cooking tallow. And then we'll pick up for part 2.